Yep,
No.
I got it. Okay. Look out.
All right. Marvelous. Well, good evening, everybody. It's good to see you all. See a lot of old and new friends. Some of you that I've talked to on the forum. Mike Reyes, nice to see you and meet you in person, sort of virtually-ish. Anyway, and others that we've corresponded with. So great to see everybody. Just what a cool group to belong to. And this, like, when I think about, like, we were struggling to get boats in Utah for a while, and I was like contemplating buying a J70 or something stupid like that. And I thought, but then I'd never still see Phil again. That's just not going to work. So that's part of the keeping it ultimate is all the cool people that are in this class. So much fun to hang out with. So good to see everybody. Before I get too far into this here, let's just do a quick plug for the North American Championship this year. It's going to be in Richmond. September 9th, 10th, and 11th. And Tom Wolf, the regatta chair, has come up with a pretty cool format, I think. We're going to do a bay tour race on Friday. If you've never been to Richmond and sailed your Ultimate 20 in current under the Golden Gate Bridge, it's an experience I can highly recommend. It's like, I think I actually was trembling while doing it. It's just this weird feeling. It's pretty cool. But anything, Mike, you want to mention about the regatta coming up in September?
I know John's been working on it a lot lately. We've been talking with the Standing Race Committee, but he's got the NORs. We're going to get those published fairly soon in the Regatta Network and make it open for people to see about the race. The conditions are going to be perfect. I've looked at the long weather forecast, long-term forecast, and it will be just a beautiful fall day, wonderful conditions. So we know that's going to happen. So at this point, it's just a matter of getting the paperwork done, and you'll see more about this shortly, I'm sure, from John.
Mike, what kind of wind
right
do you
on.
typically have in early September?
Well, early September, can be, a little bit of the hangover from the summer, but the regatta area that we're going to be racing in, we have a lot of flexibility because it's in the lee of Angel Island. So depending upon winds, we can move it, out towards Olympic Circle if winds are light, and bring it back closer to the club if winds are stronger. So there really is a big gradient right in the area that we can plan this regatta. So we're planning it for 8 to 12 knots of wind and flat water and sunny weather.
Looking forward to it, Mike. Okay, cool. So let's get going. Here's the format of our session for our webinar this evening. We know it's spring and everybody's working on their boats, and there's as somebody earlier mentioned, the boats have been out there a while, so they need a little bit of care and love. Fortunately, they're super well built, so not most time not huge things to do, but we've got some examples of a few big things that you could end up doing, and then there's lots of small things, and we've got lots of information as a class on our forum that we can share with everybody. So we'll be going over that. So just a few items. We're recording the session, so if you can stay on mute unless you're talking, that'll be helpful in terms of the clarity of the audio. And we're going to try to get through everybody's questions tonight, so it may take us an hour and a half or so, but if you have a question, you can post it in the chat, or you can use the hand raise icon, and Emily and I will try to moderate and make sure we get to everybody's question. When we're answering a question, we've got a lot of experts on this call, a lot of people that have owned boats for a long time, and we plan to rely on the whole group. I see Greg, Mike Eisenberg, a lot of people on here who have done quite a bit of repair work to boats. And so we've got a great group to answer questions. So if you've got an answer or comment, we want to encourage you to add your expertise to the conversation here as well. I'm by no means an expert on everything U20, and we've got a couple of presenters. I'm going to present a few things. Fred Darnell is going to talk about the restoration of hole 20 that was in a big car accident. That's Trees Decker's old boat. Alan sent me some great pictures of when he rebuilt the stringer, which is a common problem on some of the early boats. So he's going to walk us through that, and then we'll jump into some Q&A.
One correction, Travis, it's 57.
Oh, 57. Thank you,
Yeah.
Tree. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So where do you find this? I get this question a fair amount. The main thing is on the forum, when you're looking for different things, you'll want to make sure you log in. One of the things that I'd love to change on the forum is that the attachments are only viewable if you're signed in, but we have a forum section on maintenance, and we try to keep that up to date with current suggestions on where to find things. And different posts from members about how to repair different problems with the U20. So you can find that out in the maintenance, U20 boat maintenance and care section. Just a couple of highlights that are out there. There's a spreadsheet on the original running rigging for the boat. So, which was primarily stay set. So it's pretty economical boat to rig from a running rigging perspective. And a lot of people are still running stay set on the boat, and it works great. There's some alternative suggestions out there, some newer high-tech lines for halyards and different things that just speed up how fast you can raise the halyard. So those options are listed here as well. And I think there's even ideas beyond this, but this is sort of the original list that Don Corey, and a lot of you know Don, he's kind of been the glue in the class for a long time on these things. So this is Don's original rigging list, and also out there is the specifications for the wire, jib, and main halyard. So if you're looking to replace your rigging, wondering what the sizes are, look no further. It's out here posted in this list on the forum. And then we've also been going through and trying to identify, as the boats age, people need parts, and some of the parts are not Harken. So you can go buy it off the Harken website. So the keel wedges, the plastic wedges, and the rails that hold the hatch boards were built originally by Gary's Plastic in Santa Cruz, California. The website's listed here. You can, of course, make your own. I've talked to a few of you that've got Starboard and made your own, but if you call Gary's, they can make the rails and wedges for you, and he's got the templates, and he'll knock them out and send them to him. He's pretty economically priced. The graphics on the thing, if you want a nice fresh set of U21 design graphics for the side of your boat, PPD Multimedia out there has those. And again, they're just vinyl graphics. You can also go get some made locally, but these guys have the graphic design stuff on file. They can crank them out for you. The aluminum mast was built by Ballinger Spars. If you haven't been to Buzz's website, ballingerspars.com, he's got a lot of great information about how to maintain the aluminum spar, and also he'll sell parts for the mast. He doesn't make aluminum masts anymore, but he sells parts for the masts, and he'll answer questions about the mast. So Buzz is just super helpful, really great guy to talk to, really knowledgeable, and despite all the history of the aluminum masts, a lot of us really like the aluminum masts, and Buzz is still very much in the business of supporting aluminum mast owners. So there are a few used aluminum masts. So what happened is the Bayview boats all upgraded to carbon, and so Keith Ziegler, and if you ever need his contact, you can reach out to Emily or I on the class forum, has a few used aluminum masts. So if you run into somebody who lost their aluminum rig and would like to stick with that, there are a few used aluminum rigs out there on the market. For a while, he was selling them for around $300-400, basically at his cost to buy them and preserve them. So the class approved carbon mast is the Forte mast, and we've just got the website listed. We used to have a mast for the class in inventory. We're not doing that any longer because Forte really wasn't honoring that, so we got our deposit back. The rough part about this, I'll just tell you guys, if you ever break your mast, you're probably done, because the Forte mast takes a while to get built and shipped, and it's a process, and it's just kind of a bummer deal. We've not found a way to make that better, but there is an option out there. Couple others here, frequent questions, stanchions, got a bent stanchion, need a new stanchion. Again, there's, especially for those of you in coastal areas, there's places that do stainless work and they can make you some, but rail makers in Costa Mesa, California, built a lot of the stanchions for the boats and can do replacement work there, or repair work. If you need a new rudder, Phil's Foils, which is CCI in Canada, they will make a class approved rudder. I have one, good rudder, really well made. It's an expensive thing, so take care of your existing rudder. You don't want to buy a new one if you don't have to. We also have the rudder molds, and we've relocated those as a class to Elkhorn Composites, and looking at possibly building some rudders, just still working out the details with Craig out there, whether it's economical, makes sense for him to do that, or if people should just get redirected to CCI. So more to come there. There's a couple other things, specialty parts that Craig is going to build. The keel covers. So when you've got your keel in the up position, there's that little fiberglass cover that goes around the top. A lot of people lose those. If you leave them on, they blow off. Don't ask me how that happens or how I know that happens. So Craig is going to probably build a few of those, and we'll probably list those for folks to buy on the class website. Maybe rudders, and for Mike Reyes and maybe one or two others, we're trying to get some spinnaker pole sleeves fixed. And talking to Craig, if you're having a problem that spinnaker pole sleeve, you do want to address the cracks in that and fix the mount so that the cracks will not go away. They will get worse, and one day your cover will go in the water. So you don't want to ignore that. And there's a repair procedure we could get into. I hadn't really planned on covering that, but might be one if people are interested in. We should talk about that. But it is cheaper to repair the cover than to have a new one made. So your cover is valuable. Don't lose it. That's what we should say about that. Okay, and then so any questions about that? And then I'm just going to jump into, with the help of everybody on this site, just talk really quick about one of the common repairs, which is how to fix a leaky keel box. And I'll show you some gruesome.
Yeah,
Ultimate
Travis,
20 damage
I'm sorry
pictures.
to interrupt, but we also, if people need those metal locking tabs that go through your plexiglass, we made 10 of them, and you can reach out to me and we'll sell them at a very cheap price to you.
Yeah, cool. I didn't know you had those, Bob. That's awesome. We've got those, and we've got outboard bolts. So, and this is just a bolt that's got the little spacer on it. So when your bracket fits on those, we've got some of those. We've got some rudder pins, and it sounds like Bob's got some hatch lock hasps, and we've got a few. So we've got some of those. Those are very custom parts. We had some made by Mike, and I think Craig's built some too. So thanks for mentioning that, Bob.
Where would somebody go?
Locking tabs?
Sorry, go ahead.
What locking tabs that go through plexiglass are we talking about?
It's the little hasp that goes through the top of the plastic hatch into the vertical hatch, so you can put a padlock on it, the little metal hasp. Yeah. If you lose it, we had some of those made.
How about spreaders for the mast?
Buzz can get you aluminum spreaders.
Okay. I have a carbon fiber mast, and I have my when my rigger put my carbon fiber mast together, and when I bought the carbon fiber mast, it didn't come with new spreaders. So we put the old spreaders on the carbon fiber mast, and my old spreaders need to be replaced. So I'm not sure what I would do. Just buy another aluminum spreaders, or should I look for something else?
Forte uses aluminum spreaders now.
Okay. So I might as well go with somebody local like Ballinger and ask them. Is that right?
Yeah, Phil, what did you get on your mast? Well, you just bought yours a year or two ago, right?
Forte, it was a few years ago. Forte provided aluminum spreaders for that carbon mast. Prior to mine, they provided carbon fiber spreaders for the masts.
Okay.
So
All right, maybe we'll make a note of that on the class side. And David and Phil, if you guys have any other things about the carbon mast we should list, I'd love to have that for the class site. We have
Hey,
pretty
Travis?
limited information on there about the carbon mast, so it'd be good to build up a little more knowledge on that.
Hey, Travis.
Yeah.
I have a relatively new carbon mast, and they provided aluminum spreaders that are wrapped in carbon fiber that just so they look the same as the mast, but they're actually aluminum inside.
And that's from Forte, Donna?
Yes.
Okay, well.
Donna,
there's some
you and
options,
I-
David.
You and I got the mast at the same time because we broke our mast on the same race. And mine are aluminum. Maybe I was supposed to get carbon fiber and never did.
Well, I mean, they look like carbon, but they are in fact aluminum inside.
Yeah, mine looked like aluminum.
yeah, mine are aluminum. They apparently stopped wrapping them with carbon. They decided it wasn't worth their effort.
Yeah.
So maybe I need to go to Forte and try to get new spreaders.
If you've got a Forte mast, that's what I would call.
Okay.
How are your spreader attachments?
They're on the outside of the mast.
There's a bar that goes, it's a Forte mast. There's a bar that goes through the mast, and then there are two pieces that are bolted on either side.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, I have, I think I was able to buy the bolt-on parts on the outside from Forte, and I had a machine shop here in town machine a bar to go through the middle when I bent mine. We bent it pulling the spinnaker up.
All right.
Good deal.
Yeah, that was a good
Oh.
trick.
Of note, maybe, and for a different conversation, the spreaders on the Forte mast, we recently compared them to the aluminum mast, and they are swept much further aft. Don't know why. Don't know the effects, but they're significantly different. And I think we've got some pictures of it, but that's probably for a different conversation.
We might need to do some comparison there. I know that's from Steve trying to make some sales for the carbon mast, but I wonder if they're all that way too. It might be worth checking out. Yeah.
So Steve looked at mine and compared them to the previous manufacturer of the carbon fiber mast and then the aluminum mast, and the Forte is significantly different.
Okay. Thanks for that, David. And
Yeah.
like I said, let's I think I'm gonna go start a carbon mast thread out there, and love to have all you guys contribute to that, because I think we need to build up that body of knowledge a bit.
Steve took a lot of data.
Okay.
Steve and Tim Porter took a lot of data on my mast, and they sailed in aluminum next to mine, and they would have a lot of feedback.
Sounds good. Okay, so just a couple of things here. We'll just go. This is a common one, I think, for a lot of people. So the issue that you'll get is you'll start getting a little bit of water inside the forward tank. Everybody had water in the forward tank, you know. I just figure a U20 comes with water in the forward tank. That's how my boats have always been. But so you start getting a little bit of water in there. And the way the boats were constructed originally, you had your hull mold, and then there was a part for the part where the keel slides through. That part was molded into the hull, and it has a flange at the top of it. And then if you look inside the boat, you've got the pan that sits in the boat, and that pan sits flat against that keel section where that flange is. And so the first thing you got to do to address this problem is you got to get the keel out of the boat. You can do what my good friend Doug just recently did. There's a great picture of his boat hanging up in the barn here. And they pulled the keel out and then lifted it off with a tractor. Or you can also take the aluminum, the head off the keel, and you can lower the keel in a slip. People have done it that way as well. I'm just going to jump forward a little bit to show you this picture here of the flange that I'm talking about. So this is inside a U20, and this is the deck or the forward pan. And here's the keel flange right here. And you can see right here, here's the hole for a keel bolt. In Doug's situation, you can see there should be a piece of G10 or epoxy that's sitting here that that key insert goes into. And on Doug's boat, it had fallen off right here, so it wasn't attached very well. And you can see the putty that the factory used between the flange and the pan. So what we're seeing happening in these older boats, right, is this putty is getting brittle. And not every boat had putty. Some boats, they used 5200, and there's pros and cons to 5200, 3M 5200 caulk. And there's some pros and cons to this putty. And some of the folks that have done repairs, some have used epoxy here. And I'm not going to go into the pros and cons of all the material. We'll be here all night debating what everybody thinks should be the best thing in that joint, right? But the bottom line is this joint gets fractured, and this can happen from a couple of things. One is you drop the keel, you run aground. Another thing that happens is, and I was talking to Craig at Elkhorn the other day, really important to have keel boards, or excuse me, your floorboards in the boat, because the floorboards distribute the weight onto the pan instead of your weight hitting the bottom of the boat. When your weight hits the bottom of the boat, it flexes and it can create gaps between the pan and the hole. And those gaps can spread to other places inside the boat, including the keel joint here. And any kind of crack in there, if you can imagine the U20 on a plane and the hydraulics of water flushing up this joint, I'm pointing to it on the screen here, but flushing up inside the keel gap, and then it comes up to the top, and the pan, you've got the top of the keel pushing down with the gasket. The water is going to find some place to exit. If you've got any cracks in here, that's where the water is going to exit. So that's where you find water. There's a nice write-up from Richard Hunt on the class website on how to address this. And here you can see the keel of this boat has been removed. And I'm just going to zoom in a little bit because he did such a good job on this repair. It's a little hard to see, but you can see a small line right here. And again, that's the pan that's in front, and then the flange right here. And what he's done is he's gone in here with a Dremel and removed this material, and then he's backfilled that material and then just improved the integrity of that joint. Another repair that Craig has done at Elkhorn is a little more involved, is he'll go in on the inside of this joint and envelop this in glass. So there is no joint anymore, but that's a really involved repair. The other thing that can happen here is if you run aground, show you this picture, a couple things we found in this boat. So this boat ran aground and broke the key inserts that hold the keel screws out here. And so again, got to do some repair work here, but really important is attending to the inside damage, is switching back here. This is the G10 blocking. And you want to make sure that those key inserts, if you're using them, are well bedded into the G10, that there is that blocking behind there. And again, great write-ups from Richard Hunt on the website about how to make this really strong. Now, depending on how you sell your boat, just dropping down to this example from Richard, he bolted the D10 in. I mean, he really went above and beyond, but this is a boat that's sitting in the water all the time at Bayview Yacht Club, right? So kind of a different solution. You guys may want to go with a lighter solution. There's a couple of different ways to do this. And obviously, as far as the class is concerned, as long as you're not screwing around with your keel, we're not too concerned from a racing perspective about how many Scotty bolts you're using on this thing or not, but that's kind of what you're looking for. Few other things that are worth noting on this repair that I'll just call out here, and then I'll pause for some discussion on this one. This is where the keel lift pole, and you can see on Doug's boat right here, that caulking, right? If it's not cared for, if the boat's not covered, you get water ingress into that hole, and then the balsa, what does balsa do when it gets water on it? It rotted. And so he's got to add some epoxy back in here and fill this out. So really also important, just kind of calls out one of the maintenance items is looking at the caulk that's around the keel crane tower and making sure that that's got integrity and you're not getting water into the core here. So this is a pretty common one. Just grabbed a couple of shots. I'm obviously not going into every little detail about this repair. Again, there's a great write-up from Richard Hunt on this repair. And, you know, not the corner on the market. There's a variety of techniques to address this problem. But let me just pause right there and let's talk questions or comments on that one.
Travis.
Or we can move on to the next one if everybody's like, holy crap, I don't ever want to do that.
Travis, I've done the same type of repair where I've had that issue with my boat. First thing, I'd been raising the boat with the keel, and my compression post, the G10 had fallen off underneath. So, and that's only actually threaded into the G10. So it essentially lifted the deck at the same time. Luckily, the boat didn't fall. So I had to put an inspection port in there. I got new G10, and I went ahead and epoxied that in underneath, and was able to go ahead, and it's actually now stainless steel through bolted, so there is no chance that my boat will ever fall anywhere again.
Yeah.
I did have leak in my keel box from pretty much day one of receiving the boat. I was able to go ahead and on the trailer take the top keel plate off, and then just drop the boat in the water with the keel hoist line on it, and drop the keel down below the actual joint. Similar to what you were saying that Richard Hunt did, as I went ahead and I actually put some screwdrivers in and separated that joint, used a Dremel tool to go ahead and clean it out. And then I injected 5200 into that joint. And after I put the 5200 into it, I layered the entire thing with, wax paper, so that it kept it nice and clean, so that it wouldn't actually join or anything to the keel. So the keel was never out of the boat. Raised the keel back up. Then I went ahead and put the plate back on the top of it, put the boat back in the water and lowered the keel, which then put the compression on that joint and let the 5200 dry. And I just left that wax paper in there, and it just deteriorated over time. And I can tell you now, for over 10 years, I have not had a drop of water in my keel box. So super.
I like that. I like that approach. I've got a leaky boat myself, and I'm thinking about doing that very same thing. That's a good, solid approach, I think.
And you know, the thing is the nice part is you don't have to go through, as long as you got deep enough water to be able to drop that keel down a little bit further down. Obviously, you don't want to drop it down so far that you can't pull your keel back up, because it went through all the way through the slot. But amazing how well that really did take care of that issue. So.
And I think Greg brought up a good point, guys. Another thing to keep an eye on right here, you see in this boat, these two holes are where the keel tower mounts, and the bolts on Greg's boat, I don't know what happened there. I remember you telling me this story.
Look at the G10 that was underneath once I pulled it out. One, they weren't glassed in well, or at least epoxied in well. And two, when they threaded it into it, it was only threaded into the side of it. It wasn't actually threaded all the way to the center of that block of G10.
Little quality control issue there. Yeah.
Right. So when I got the new pieces of G10, and I can tell you, working with G10 will go through a lot of saw blades trying to cut it to size. That is from hard material.
So when I heard this story from Greg, I stuck my phone. I only have a hatch here. I stuck my phone back in here to check and make sure all the nuts were on the keel tower. That's probably a good idea for everybody to go look on that on their boat, especially if you're using a hoist. The other thing is, just call out on this picture, you can see the flange I was talking about from the pan. And talking to Craig, you know, like we all wonder, like, why did the class rules say you should use keel boards? So talking to Craig about this, the keel boards move your weight from landing right here on the hole and causing flexing between this joint to sharing that weight onto the pan instead. So that's the importance of the keel boards in this area here. Mark Allen is nodding his head. I think, Mark, you had a humongous leak right here, right? And the water was coming in through here as well.
I didn't. Yes, I've had leaks in my boat, not there, but Marty May, who owned Redline, he had a habit of always jumping in his boat right in through the hatch and landing right in that square with no boards on it, till eventually it did separate. He'd start and he got a leak through there. So I know, don't jump into your boat directly into that spot without keel boards or something in that location, or it will separate.
Yeah.
And Travis, when you're talking about keel boards, the plywood ones that came with the boat are probably better than some of the sort of the matting things that are put in there, because the plywood will spread the load probably better than those.
Like the rubber,
the dry deck.
Dry deck, yeah. The dry deck does. The dry deck offers protection, but it doesn't spread the load. Is probably the rub there, right?
I would think it may do some, but the plywood probably does a lot more.
Yeah.
I had that same problem in the race where that did separate. We were racing 189 miles on the U20. I know I'm nuts. But that separated in that exact same spot. And if it wasn't, and this is the funniest part, I would say, out of any U20 situation, is that the back hatch was actually sealed so well that it kept the boat afloat. And I know most people say their back hatch leaks like crazy, but mine did not. So definitely an issue where keep an eye on that, make sure that that seal stays nice and tight, because you don't want your keel wall to be leaking in there just in case too.
Cool.
Travis, I did that exact repair that Greg's talking about 3 weeks ago at Craig's shop. And he recommended using a toughened epoxy, and I don't have that product, but Craig actually gave me a tube of it so I could bring it to Kem Bricker. But I used a buzzy tool, or sometimes you call them, I don't know, those for like drywall cutting. And that worked really well to go under that flange and open up that cut. And then I just used putty knives to shove the toughened epoxy into that slot. And it was quite easy to get it way back in there. And I could see it from the portholes that I'd gotten all the way through the flange and had plenty of epoxy. There wasn't any delamination or empty spots. And then I was able to smooth that down pretty well. And that's obviously stronger than it ever was originally.
So on that tool, the sort of the big name, it would be a Fine tool, F-I-E-N. They were sort of one of the originators, but it's all sort of those vibrate, as you say, the vibrating tool. But if you look sort of a Fine tool, then you can get others that are a lot less expensive, but they all work pretty well.
Okay, F-I-N. Oh, Emily, if you write these things down, I'll add them to the
F-I-E-N, but that's
okay.
They were sort of the originator. And as I said, I've got a Porter cable that works just as well, but it's like $300 less.
Okay, yeah, great guys. We'll get this added to the website as well. So thanks for sharing. Any other
200?
Go ahead.
I have a keel box repair coming in my future. I have a crack.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you and me both, David. So maybe we can compare notes there. Anybody else with a comment, question?
What is 5200?
It's a 3M silicone it's got a real strong adhesive
it's actually it's a polyurethane, and it's a really good bonding. It's sort of like Gorilla Glue, only sort of in a caulk. It's super tenacious. I tried to get a 40-footers keel bolts plates off that were bonded to the hull with 5200, and it took me about a week of slamming with chisels and sledgehammers and whatever. So it bonds. 4200 is the sort of the less sticky of the 3M products like that, but 5200 for that is probably the best.
Yeah, maybe the epoxy that Bob mentioned, which Bob, if you send that to us, we'll put it on the website. But the epoxy might be easier to work with than 5200. Like Greg mentioned, the challenge with working with 5200, well, it's a caulk and you can inject it, so that part's cool. But like, man, this stuff has a mind of its own. Like it sticks to everything, and it's a little bit challenging to work with.
But it does have some flex compared to an epoxy, so you know there's a little give in those joints, which is sometimes probably necessary.
Yeah, I can give you a reference on how strong 5200 is that in the America's Cup in the 80s, they actually put the keel on when they put it onto the 12 meter. with 5200, and then they tightened up their keel bolts. And when they took the keel bolts off, they could not get the keel off until they took cable to run through the 5200 to actually saw it apart. So
I believe it.
All right, well, keep us moving here. Fred Darnell is the one doing a major overhaul, and he was just going to share sort of how that project's coming. It's a pretty interesting slide. So take us, 7 minutes on this one. Hopefully none of you never have to do this to your boats. That's what I would say, but it's pretty interesting stuff. So Fred, do you want to go ahead and share?
Yeah, Travis. Yeah. I will share. I think, yeah, you'll have, there you go. Let me try one more time here. Well, hello, everyone. I think this is my first appearance at this call. You guys see my screen now? Am I sharing?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good. I wish I had some of those problems that I saw, some of those other ones on the previous presentation. I've got a whole host of them, as Tree said, hole number 57. In an automobile accident, and has damage everywhere. I'm going to show you guys some of that. Not going to get into details. I'm not trying to, certainly not going to teach how to do these kind of repairs. There are really good YouTube videos, and West System puts out a great guide on fiberglass repair. I'm following, in essence, the West System approach, and so I'll just start by telling you guys some of the damage. Really, the damage I think falls into 4 categories, and I've got them outlined here. There are through holes where something punctured the hull in numerous places, namely trailer parts punctured the hull in numerous places, and so there's hull damage on the starboard 4 center line toward the front on the center line, 3 holes in the port toward the rear, and 3 holes in the starboard side. So really the through holes all go into the same category of repair. And I'm doing all of the through hole repairs from the outside of the boat. So I'm cutting my way in to good glass till I get to the inside. I'm putting a backer on the inside, and then I'm working my way out to the outside of the boat. So that's 2 to 3 layers of 8-ounce bidirectional glass cloth. I'm going to show some pictures of this, so this will make more sense in a minute. Foam core, 2 to 3 layers on the outside, and then finally fairing and sanding. There's one other category of damage to the boat that I'll show a couple of pictures of, and that's some significant damage at the cabin to deck structure, or a fracture where the cabin and the deck join. That took a different type of repair, and it is kind of interesting. You have to be very careful with this kind of repair. When you see the pictures, you understand why. But anyway, it really comes down to removing the outer skin and its core. I had to add a lot of drain holes and through holes in this particular section of the boat to dry out the core that I chose to leave in place. Took some straightening and some reinforcing on the inside, a replacement of the core, and then putting back the outer skin in its place, and then finally fairing, sanding, and reworking the texture. The other ones I'm not going to get into. They're typically, they're just gel coat damage all over the boat. Really that's just filling and sanding and fairing and preparing for paint. The entire boat will get painted when I'm done. And then finally, miscellaneous damage to the carbon fiber spinnaker hull. It got a little bit compressed beyond its limits on one end. And so it had to, I had to do some repairing to that. I may end up buying a new carbon fiber hull. I'm not sure that it's possible to really measure the loss in strength. The repair should be okay, but I really don't know. So generally speaking, the through holes get repaired like this. First, you cut through until you've got good glass. There's a lot of delamination near these holes, and you'll see some of them are quite big. And so you really have to get past the delamination. You have to get to where you've got a good solid core that's not crushed or delaminated from its inner or outer glass layers. And so really they do look a lot like this. This is pretty much how they start. The first step is getting all the way to the inside of the boat. And then these red lines really just illustrate where the glass goes. There's first step is I sand the inside. I reach through the hole, and with a 80 grit paper, I rough up the area around the repair on the inside of the hull. So I'm sitting outside the boat, my arms are inside the hull, and I'm just roughing, retexturing the inside so that a pre-cured backer made of glass, of just glass cloth, 3 layers of glass cloth, goes on the inside and acts as really just a support structure for everything that comes next. You can see that the inner hull, this hole here on the inside skin is beveled. And so the idea is just to lay glass cloth in that so that you get a good adhesion. I start with the smaller pieces first. And so that second red line, working our way from the bottom up, represents the smallest of the 4 to 6 pieces of glass. Then an overlapping piece of glass on that stuff is allowed to cure. And then the core goes back in. I'm using foam core to repair all these holes, mixed with flocks and resin to just act as a filler and a thickening agent, and to prevent air bubbles where there are deformities and imperfections and so on. And then finally, 2 to 3 other 8-ounce bidirectional glass layers, progressively larger until they reach just past the feathered portion of the outside of the skin. That's really all of the through holes are being repaired in this manner. Unfortunately, they're not all nice and round like that, as you'll see.
Hey, Fred, what's flocks?
Flocks is a cotton turned into something that looks like powder. It's something that you can mix with glass 2-part epoxy resin and get some strength, certainly some filling capability, but not as weak as let's say a fairing compound or glass beads. This is not as quite as strong as cut fiberglass, where you might take glass strands and cut it into fibers and mix in into the resin. But it is nearly that strong, and it's much easier to work with. And the great thing about it is it fills, as you'll see in a couple of the pictures, it fills the imperfections very, very nicely and prevents some air pockets in the glass. One thing I should point out is I've got a great friend, John Wigney, who's a club member, who has built a fiberglass airplane. He's been assisting occasionally with the project. And, I think probably his biggest contribution, other than his hard labor, has been what I'm showing you here. Tracing the outline of these patches onto plastic, on the clear plastic. Pretty thick, 8 or 10 mil clear plastic. It needs to be somewhat stiff. You trace each of the patches onto the plastic, and then you turn it over. You can see in the left hand, well, actually both these photos, this plastic is inverted. It's actually under the glass. I wet out the glass on the plastic and then trim it with the plastic still in place. That allows you to handle this glass, carry it around, put it in place, shift it and get it to where you want it, squeegee it out, and then pull the plastic off the glass cloth. And it has made these repairs very, very easy and quick. I suppose everybody that does glass work knows that. It was new technique for me. And even though I've done a good bit of glass work myself, this turned out to be really a time saver. You can see on the left photo, I've got a piece of plastic under a piece of 8-ounce glass bidirectional cloth. I've squeegeed in resin. The right side, they're cut and ready to be installed on the boat.
Fred, just adding, I know, John, I've done stuff on airplane stuff with him. It's sort of just additional. You'd put a second layer of plastic on top to help spread that also helps spreads the epoxy without getting too messy. And then you sort of cut out, then peel one layer and then put it down. But if you use 2 layers, it can work really well.
Yeah. I did the first couple patches with 2 layers. I found that I'm pretty good with the squeegee and sparing use of the epoxy. I've been able to save a little time by not having to do 2. Nonetheless, great idea, and I did the first couple holes that way. All righty, so this is what the holes look like when they start. I've forgotten the guy's name. Trees, the guy's name at the boat shop. Can you help me?
Yeah, Mike Dye.
Yeah, Mike Dye. So Mike Dye had been over this boat with a fine-tooth comb, and he tapped it everywhere and drew circles and put red marks all over the boat to indicate where delamination had occurred. I did exactly the same thing, every square inch of the boat. It took hours actually. And I did the same thing. I marked him and he was spot on. He did not miss any places. Every place he marked was in fact delaminated. But this is what the holes look like when they start. They look a little bit innocuous, right? A little crack here, a little crack there, until you start peeling away the outer layer. And before you get to something that's solid, they end up looking like this. And so on the left side, these holes are cut and to some degree tapered. On the inside, you can see, I don't know if I can zoom in. I don't think I'm going to be able to zoom in. Let's see. I can't tell if it's zooming. No, it's not. Anyway, so as I've shown you in that diagram, the glass that you see on the inside skin of the boat is feathered. The balsa core is just cut to give me room to feather the inside glass, and then the outside glass is feathered. In the second picture on the right, you can see that I put a backer in place. This is using epoxy resin and this flocks, this cotton flocks that helps thicken it. And so the inside patch is actually bigger than the part the area of the gel coat that you see cleaned away there. So just to give you an idea how big the patch is on the inside, it really extends 2 inches or so, maybe 3 in some cases beyond. It's not really there for strength, although it probably does add some. It's really there just to give you something to set the next layers of glass against and the foam core against. When all 4 to 6 layers are in place, this is what it looks like. I should point out that if you look at these diagrams, you see there's an arrow. It says the word out is written above an arrow that points forward and a number 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 6. And so when it finally all goes together and you peel the plastic off, this is what you're left with. You're left with really glass that you can hardly see there. And it extends out a little bit past right now, a little past the where the gel coat's been removed. Now this is set a little below the what will ultimately be the faired surface of the hull. So fairing compound will come next, and it will be faired down to match the hull prior to priming and painting. But that's really what all the through holes end up looking like when they're done. I'll stop for just a second. Any questions about any of that? There's some really good videos on YouTube about how to use that methodology for fixing these. So as minor as this looks, this is actually the worst damage on the boat. In fact, when I considered taking on the project, this little crack right here was the one that scared me the most. And that's because the boat hit a concrete divider and the weight of the cabin trunk and the keel squeezed that part of the deck against the concrete. And when it did, it folded that part of the hull, that part of the deck right there, over the sole. You can imagine it shifting inward and folding toward the sole there, but toward the sole of the cockpit. And it resulted in a very significant crack that runs down the length of that, starting there at that cabin to hold to deck joint and runs toward the aft side of the boat. So the method for repairing that, you do have to be a little careful because you don't want to lose the shape. Now, the trouble here was it was not the right shape because it had folded. It had ended up permanently bent, very slightly, almost immeasurably, but certainly out of shape. And so initially the work had to be done on the inside. And that was just to clean up and support, put in some structure on the backside, on the inside of the boat that would allow me to remove the outside skin here and the balsa core. And so really that's it. You can see here the skin has been cut away, the core that was damaged and it was actually completely compressed, was removed. And here's the beginning of the foam core going back in. That matrix of holes you see below is looking for water. How far did water, over the years the boat was exposed, how far did the water seep into the balsa? And so the last row of holes showed no signs of water. The second to the last or lowest row of holes, one of the holes showed some water, and the rest were completely saturated. In fact, when I drilled the top 2 rows of holes there, water literally poured out of the core. And so that was allowed to, those holes go all the way through to the inside. They were allowed to evaporate. I had a heater in there. The boat's been under cover for quite a while now. And so all that at this point has been repaired. The procedure really was to shape the foam core, fill with flocks, and in some cases some glass strands that were cut and put into the mix. And then the original skin that I took off, that you see that I cut away there, went back in place for the most part. There was a couple parts missing, but that skin went back in place, and I've begun to fill and fair that now. Here's a picture of that skin pretty much back in place. It's being held down with some weights, obviously some tape, and that cloth you see is peel ply to give me some texture as I put on the glass that's coming next, because the step after this that I do not have a picture of, unfortunately, was to take that crack, that separation you see between the 2 skins, that all gets ground out, much like I was doing a through hole repair, and then it gets layers of glass cloths and strips to fill the taper, and then eventually sanded, faired, and then retextured to match the texture of the rest of the boat there. So that repair is actually nearly done, but I don't have a picture of it. Any questions about that ugly one? Nothing there. All right, finally, the trailer. A lot of damage to the trailer. I'll be taking the boat off the trailer. So the keel is not in the boat. First thing I did is take it to the yacht club and put it on the hoist and drop the keel out the bottom on the grass. There was some repair work to do to the keel. There's a lot of repair work I've done to the trailer, but the axle is still slightly bent. And so when the boat comes off for painting, the trailer will go to an axle shop and get get that repaired. All the damage at this point is repaired to the point of fairing and filling. I'm now got some fairing filler on the boat, and we'll be taking it to finish that and prime it and paint it. And that's really it. And I guess I get to look forward to some of these other repairs we talked about earlier. So I don't know.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How close are you to getting it back in the water?
Yeah, probably. Let's see, I painted my other boat. I'm using the very same technique for this one. That took about 30 hours. So I'm gonna guess I'm a few weeks, 4 weeks away, maybe.
Hospice regatta?
Huh?
Hospice regatta?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm not sure getting it back in the water means me sailing that boat in a regatta at any rate. I probably need to go learn how to sail it first.
Well, we're looking forward to having it in the water.
Yeah, it's been a fun project. Now, the San Juan 23 I restored had more than 150 holes in the bottom. To put it in perspective, they were not through holes. They were more polyester resin blisters. A lot of labor, but that came out really nice. And so I expect this will be quite nice when it's done. I don't think any of the repairs will be visible. Perhaps the one on the deck will have a little bit of blemish, but I think I can get it back into shape quite nice.
And there was another fold back at the transom. I assume you did pretty much the same kind of thing back there.
Yeah, I didn't want to belabor, the meeting.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry.
So yeah, there are tons of cracks. And yeah, back there at the transom, I actually got all the way back to the back and put 3 layers of reinforcement around that corner, and then dug out that crack that you could see between the transom and whatever we call that box that goes up on the side. So that got repaired much like you see, and is actually beautiful now. It's ready for paint and is quite nice. There was a giant hole up in the front. Yeah, so I mean, it had 8 or 9 holes total. But generally speaking, I don't see any problems with it. The scariest one was the cabin to deck. But it turned out very nice and very strong. It does not flex when I stand on it, and that's a pretty good sign. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Cool. Thanks, Fred. You're probably going to go to heaven for saving a U20. So good job.
Hey, just quickly adding to the flocks and the fairing and stuff. If you go to the West, they have a lot of different additives to epoxy for thickening. And if you go to the back of one of them, it'll tell you whether it's an adhesive filler or if it's for fairing. The adhesives are going to be more in line with the flocks to help it bond and bind thing better, whereas the fairing is mostly just for easier sanding.
Yeah. Thanks, BJ.
Yeah, you have to use stuff for strength in places where you need strength, and you don't want to use stuff for strength in places where you plan to do a lot of sanding. That's for sure.
All right, cool. Thanks for that. That's really over the top, man. I hope I never have to do something like that. And let's just acknowledge, right? Like, if somebody ran a J70 into a freeway barrier, it would be in a dumpster. So again, just attesting to the timelessness of the Ultimate 20. Only Ultimate 20s get resurrected, right? I mean, that's how this goes. So good job. Hey, so we've got one more presentation. Alan put together some slides on some of the earlier boats. I think the big thing, right, is that center strut that lives underneath the mast. Some of you may know the story of Clifton Odom's boat in San Diego. If you get water up in the front and that beam starts getting wet and it turns to mush, you can have bad things happen. And actually that boat is still alive. Somebody fixed it, but essentially the center stringer in his boat turned to mush and the mast went through the top of the cabin. I think that's the only boat that's ever happened to. Most of us have figured out, don't let water get in there, but the earlier boats, it's not glassed. And so Alan has put together some pictures on that, but recognizing we're at 7 o'clock, maybe what we'll do is just see what questions, let's just do, post your questions in here, because we wanted to make sure we, sort of hit what generally people need. So like if people have questions that they want answered, we've got, looking at this, I mean, we've got a couple thousand years of Ultimate 20 expertise on this call. So we can pretty much handle any question if somebody has one. So maybe we'll do that first. And then if folks can hang around, I've got Alan's photos of his very intense repair of that beam, and we'll cue that up next, but we're running a little over. So question from Paul, how are they attached? On mine, Paul, they're attached with screws. The keel wedges do vary in size. So once you obtain a pair of wedges, depending on when your boat was made, they may or may not fit. I think that's one of the observations I've seen over the years. You've got to whittle those wedges down a little bit to make them fit. Anybody else on the call run into anything different than screws for how the wedges attach?
Ours were attached with screws, but instead of using having to whittle them down, we used layers of sailcloth to widen them out to take up the space, because the keel was rattling around in the trunk.
Loose fit, huh? Okay. All right, cool. Any other questions about that one? Hopefully that helps Paul.
Yeah, Phil, we had the same problem, but when I have made a whole bunch of those keel chocks a couple of years ago, and I think I made like 10 sets and sold them to everybody through the forum. But I had the same problem where I had to widen them out. But I was speaking to Craig Smith about that last week. And he said, you know, that the reason the chocks are in there was to keep the keel from doing this, not really to keep it tight. So he said, if you want to reduce the amount of wiggling or waggling, you need to use a material that he gave me that we put in the bottom of the keel box. So the wedges should, I mean, there's just not that much strength in that keel box going outward. So if you try and wedge it in there, it's just not very good at keeping it tight. So you should use some additional tight fitting material at the bottom of the keel and glue epoxy that into the bottom of the keel box.
Are you talking about where the Delron is, Bob? At the front of the keel box? Is that where you're
No,
talking
I'm talking about at the bottom of the hull.
Oh, okay.
Craig and I, because I had a little bit of play, we put on both sides of the keel at the bottom of the hull in the keel box, we put a couple of little thin epoxied on, it's a plastic material, but it's flexible. And that we could glue into the inside of the keel box to keep the keel from flopping around.
Banging around in there. Okay. Interesting.
I'd love to at some point later to find out how you affected that repair.
Yeah, I see a picture of it. I would like to see that too. That's interesting.
I wish
I know the U24 and the Antrim 27, and I see Paul Bradshaw's on here. He's got a 27. They have a gasket underneath that goes up in there that sort of like takes up the space around the keel and the bottom of the boat, right? So I don't know if it's something like that.
That gasket, Travis, is problematic in that mine is shrinking, and of course it's getting loose, and now it's coming down out of the bottom of the boat. I like the U20 finish that situation better.
I remember towing an Antrim 27 probably 10 or 15 years ago behind a power boat, and the water was coming up. The Antrim 27 has a cover that goes down over the top of the keel and then locks in place on the sides of the trunk, and the water was coming in around that. So yeah, that
in
seal.
Copious amounts.
Yeah,
We're not talking
copious
about
quantities.
like a cup. We're talking about gallons.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it will. There's a piece of rubber on mine that goes, once you lower the keel, and it goes down into that box. It's different than the U20. You lay a piece of rubber on it, then you cinch the cover, the aesthetic cover, down over the top. And it's not just aesthetic, it's structural as well.
It's very structural.
Yeah, but I've had mine going 15 and I've had no water come in.
I think the
Now we're
major,
talking.
we did 22 under sail with no water coming in, but towing it behind a power boat, the loads on the angle where you're towing it is very different from when the sails are pulling it forward.
Makes sense, yeah.
So now we're allowed to fare the bottom of the boat to the keel?
Oh no, no fairing in the bottom of the boat.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, somebody was going to say that, right, Steve? Yeah. You have to send us a picture, Bob.
I guess I gotta go put mine back up in the air again.
There's nothing, it's everything that we did was inside the keel box to keep the keel fitting snugly.
Yeah, I'll do that. That's easy. That's the best spot to fix the J70s also.
Inside the box.
You can sand inside the keel box all you want.
Yeah,
Nobody will
insert
ever
up
see it.
into the keel box, very thin material so that keeps the keel from flopping. Because it's strong right there at that intersection between the keel and the bottom of the hull and the keel box.
What I've seen is at the back edge, the back 4 inches of the keel is what actually ends up taking the load when you're sailing. So all the keels that I've pulled out so far, they've all been worn away roughly 4 to 6 inches forward of the trailing edge and just on either side. And that's just from the board flexing in the trunk. It just has to hit something. Granted, and that's on the old boats without wedges and even the new boat with the wedges. And that's the nearest point of contact when the boat is sailing. But if we can tighten that up.
It wore on the keel or the boat?
The fin of the boat, the keel.
Mark, did you have a comment about that? I saw you put your hand up. Were you just stretching, Mark Allen? Anyway.
No, I'm just waving at somebody in the brewery.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from the group? I didn't see any other on the chat. And so I'm about to turn Alan loose on this stringer repair, if that sounds okay, unless somebody else has a question we want to answer. All right, let me pull up your slides here, Alan. Okay, cool.
Okay, so can everybody hear me?
Yep.
This is an old repair at this point, and I'm not sure how that slide got in there upside down, but that's the upside down starboard side of my stringer before I tried to fix anything. And I think the next one is the port side. So you can see what's going on there is the stringer is just a piece of 1/4-inch plywood, and the outside layers are all just delaminating. This is after I've cut open the access so I can see it, and there you can see it, the port side again. So it was peeling off pretty good. I initially had planned to replace the whole piece, but when I got in there, everything except what you're looking at right here was in pretty good shape for the core. And I decided once I saw it that I could do more damage by taking it out and not putting the right shape back in. And I didn't want to mess with the shape. So I decided to use the core that was there. I patched this hole, as you can see, first patched it and then laminated some backer boards on either side of it. And then I took fiberglass impregnated with epoxy. I did all the work down below with epoxy, and then I just laid in a skin of epoxy coated fiberglass over the sides of the existing core. And this is that piece under the mast that I repaired. So that was, I mean, this is an old repair, and you said old boat, so I don't know how long ago this went out of fashion, but
yeah, I think yours is a Moorville boat, and when I was looking for my third U20, I have a Columbia built boat, and I noticed that the whole board in mine, and I suspect the USI board boats are the same, is laminated now. So even if you did get water in there, hopefully it wouldn't rot. But I don't know when they started doing that. So
yeah. So this slide is just showing me getting ready to put the pieces back in. So I made 4-inch strips of again fiberglass, set them up with epoxy, let them cure, of course, and then glued them to the bottom of the surface, and then put the panels back in, dished them out, and then it will be filling and glassing from there. So, I mean, I think it's all pretty straightforward. At the time, and Travis, I think you said this was all discussed on the class website. I talked to Richard Hunt, and he gave me the heads up about cutting the access panels the way I did, but I couldn't find anything on the web. So I think whatever there is, wasn't easy for me.
That part is not on there. I think the one on the web, the guy cut a hole and put hatches in. And I have to say, Alan, I like your finishing technique with no hatch, much more sanitary stock, looks way better. So
yeah, so matter of fact, I saw one where somebody put a larger hatch in, and I decided that structurally I didn't want to open that area up any more than it was. So I put the original hatch back in, a new version of it, but the same one. And I thought it worked out really well.
Yeah, thanks for your post. Mike Jocelyn had the same repair done. John Kettner, the factory started out, if you've got like an original Moore boat, there's no wedges. And I think 6 or so, maybe 8. Mark Allen, like 6 keel bolts or something like that on those older boats. And then they added the wedges. And when they first added the wedges, they just had 2 Scotty bolts, and then they added 4. And if you get more than that on wedges, somebody probably added, there you go. Yep, 6 keel bolts, no wedges on the original Moore boats. So yeah, Paul, you've got when they first went to the wedges, 2 Scotty bolts, and then they went back to 4. And I think that's where they ended. 2 in the front, 2 in the back. You can always add more, lots of fun. So thanks, Alan. That's a pretty sanitary repair you made there. Looks good. Very impressive. I'll add these pictures onto the website. Maybe one more thing I'll just share. I recently had fun. We were down in San Diego with the guys here, and we're around in the mark in first place. Really excited to see the mark first, and then we went to raise the spinnaker and it wouldn't go up. So some of you may have had that problem. And it's when you lose one of your halyards in the mast and you use a fish tape. Don't ever use fish tape. If somebody says fish tape, by the way, Bob Comstock, I think I reran your spinnaker halyard with a fish tape. So I'm curious if it ever worked after I did that. Maybe you can comment below, but fish tapes are not how you run spinnaker halyards. So what happens is you got the spreader bar in there. If you get any kind of cross with that, eventually it worked all fine all day Friday, and then Saturday or Thursday, and then on Friday we went to raise the spinnaker, went up 6 feet and stopped. And so what's happening is you're getting caught on that spreader bar. And I talked to Steve. Steve, thanks for the tip with the hard drive magnets. So you use a hard drive magnet and drag the messenger line through the mast. Works brilliantly. And then after a nice conversation with Buzz, you want all your lines. I didn't make sense once you explained it, but you think about that mast, it's going to curve once it's up. So you want all your lines behind the spreader. And if you take your mast butt off and you look up inside there, you'll see in front of the spreader bar is 2 nice built-in Harken cleats where your halyards will hook up if you run it in front. And my halyard had gone in front of that bar. What a disaster. So that was a little hard lesson for me to learn. So I'll just share that. But those are all the pre-prepared topics we had for you guys tonight. Happy to sit on here and answer other questions that the group has for getting their boats ready for this year.
So just to add to that, checking your halyards is sort of a last check. If you want to just pull on your spin sheet, your spin halyard on both ends, and if your main halyard bumps up and down, you're caught and you need to redo it.
Thanks, BJ. That's awesome. We should put that on the website. I wish I had known that before the San Diego nude. So
well, again, ask me how I know.
Exactly.
Similarly, better your spinnaker halyard gets stuck down than stuck up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but it's always halfway.
Unfortunately, it wasn't.
No, I went to the top of the mast to unhook the spinnaker halyard.
Yeah, we've had the same problem, Phil.
Yeah, but halfway is horrible too, because because it wants to fill and go in the water and shrimp and all that.
I think the other one, I didn't grab any pictures of this, but I think another mod that's pretty common on the U20s for those of you that haven't seen this, but most of the boats have 2 gudgeons on the back, and you can add a 4th. A lot of times that top gudgeon, you get out in some wind and manhandle the rudder, you can bend or break that top one. So a lot of boats have gone to 4. The other nice thing about 4 is if you break one, you have a spare already on the boat. So it's a pretty handy deal to have 4 gudgeons. So that's another common mod that I've seen over the years. I don't know, what else? Anything else that people can think of to share with this group?
Even if you have 4, watch for cracks.
Sorry, Phil, what was that again? Watch for cracks where?
Even if you have 4 gudgeons, watch for cracks in them.
Yeah, in the welds. Yeah.
Yeah, we broke one.
Travis, I think you know how I hold my keel down. Different. I took a tip from the Antrim 27 guys, and I've abandoned those Scotty bolts. Does anybody want to hear about that?
Sure.
I see some heads nodding. Go for it, Paul.
Yes.
Well, basically, I have hull number 74. It's Scott Gilmore's old boat. And before Scott, who owned it, Travis? Do you know?
Oh, the parties owned it before that, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a really, it was a pretty tired boat. It had some delamination and a number of things. So I got intimate with every inch of that boat over the previous year. But the thing that horrified me when I got in there, and I just maybe wasn't smart enough to know, I'm hoping that someone's going to have a comment about it and maybe change my mind. But the fact that it was held down, the keel's held down with the Scotty bolts, there's just no give. There's no forgiveness there. And it seemed to me that it was designed to rip the pan up from the sleeve every time you hit something. So what I did, and what some of the Antrim 27 guys have done, we've abandoned those metal or metallic fasteners that hold the lid on the top of the Antrim 27 keel. And we've gone to D-rings, put about halfway up the keel trunk, and using Spectra straps over the top of the cap. And I started thinking about that. Well, why don't I do that with my 20 and get rid of the Scotty bolts? And when and if I go aground, there's going to be a little give. So what I did, I put a D-ring on each side of the keel trunk in the pan, not the actual keel sleeve, but I'll call it the pan. So if you were to go into the companionway and kneel down, I've got a D-ring to the left and to the right near the winch post, I'll call it, as far forward as I could get them. And then I take about a 500-pound cinch strap, thread it over the top of the keel after it's lowered, through the D-rings, over the top, create a purchase and put it through a jam, I'll call it a jam cleat or a cinch, a buckle, if you will. And it's pretty easy to pull it tight because you're standing up. Now I can get the strap tight, but whether it's tight enough to eliminate any centerboard movement or not, I don't know. Some of you guys with more experience than me might say, no, that's a bad idea and here's why. If that's the case, I'd like to hear about it.
Anybody want to comment?
Going once?
I mean, I think anything other than a mechanical fastener is not going to hold it. Anything that's soft is going to have give no matter what. So
yeah, I agree.
There's going to be wobble in that keel for certain.
And I've fractured Scotty bolts. So, I mean, I feel like Scotty bolts, I mean, they're not quite a shear pin, but Scotty bolts are set up to break away before the panel break away. At least that's been my experience with Hull 35. And then I did have, I don't know if you can see the picture. No, definitely can't. We were trying to make a 53-mile spinnaker run this fall to get the boat from Silver Bay down to Duluth. And we had, I had 3 gudgeons on and took the top one completely off and the bottom 2 held, and we were able to hold the top of the rudder long enough to get the sails down and then use the motor to drive into 2 harbors. But it is really worthwhile to look at those gudgeons, because replacing them before you bend the other 2, they're about $120 a piece. So I'm buying 4 of them right now. So it's nice to do some preventative maintenance on that. I know I spent a lot of years on an inland river where some of my preventative maintenance I probably let go a little bit. But now that I'm back on Lake Superior, I kind of feel like I have to have everything 100% all the time. But yeah, I think Scotty bolts do give way for sure for your keel. And I don't have any, I have the Hull 35, so I don't have any wedges or anything like that. I have the 6 Scotties and I've had to replace the threads several times from them being pushed out.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. So Steve, just to recap, you're kind of saying like you don't want the give is nice if you're running aground and maybe cruising, but like the whole point is like the keel's got to be not moving when you're trying to reach optimal upwind performance, basically, right? That's what we're
Yeah, and if it's what, 74, is that right? Whole number?
Yeah.
So that has the wedges, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, you're somewhat contained. However, you're still not, a mechanical fastener is going to be the only way to really hold that down. And you know, with the old boats, you know, mine's 20, Tim Porter's 21, and we have to go down in between races and still tighten up keel bolts, the Scotty bolts rather, because they move. You know, the little, you know, the neoprene gasket, whether it be quarter, 3/8, you know, everything has that little bit of fudge factor. And so, you know, it takes a nylon strap or a Spectre strap, something like that. It's going to be okay, but it's still going to allow for movement.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, you know, I hadn't thought about that. I just kind of followed the path of some of the Antrim 27 guys. But now that you bring these points up, I think you're right. Thankfully, or maybe not thankfully, most of our sailing is about 7/8 true. We, you know, if we get into more than that, it's because we've got a front coming through. So seldom are we up and planing. Is that a fair assessment, Travis?
Yeah, unfortunately.
I'm not sure I'm going to do that change on my Ultimate, but I will definitely take that idea to the Antrim 27 that I sail on. I think it's great for that boat.
And are you still using metal latches, luggage type latches to hold that top down?
The original ones, and they don't hold very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Paul, I'll introduce you and Phil via email, since Phil sells on a 27 as well. You can.
All right.
Hull number 3.
And he sails with Jim Antrim.
Well, not anymore.
Yeah.
Jim sails on
plays
EO
on
now. He doesn't sail with us anymore.
Oh yeah, the lifestyles and the rich and famous, right? That's the. Anyway, okay. Teresa has a question. Teresa, you say your keel gasket keeps over compressing. I'm not sure I know it.
Yeah,
Can
well,
you explain what?
I didn't know any other way to say it, but so my keel is canting slightly forward, and therefore the keel gasket, it happened on the previous one, and I thought it was just worn out, and so I put a new keel gasket on, and it's done almost exactly the same thing. But essentially, the keel, the weight goes on the forward edge of the keel plate, and therefore flattens the gasket out completely toward the bow, and then
Wow.
so, and I've got 4.
Nope, we lost your audio there.
Tighten the aft ones more than the forward ones, just because I'm trying to overcome that. And
John,
Trees, you see it most significantly when you're putting the keel up and down, right? That's where it's really evident.
Yeah.
Trees, it's just because you're sailing too fast. You need to slow down.
Yeah, that doesn't happen very often.
So it says John Kettner says he has the same issue. Anybody encounter that before? I have to say I've never seen that problem.
Are the forward Delrin plate pieces in place?
Yeah, I think yeah, it is. You're talking about that round deck piece of Delrin at the front end of the keel trunk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have never noticed this. I will start looking for it. Thank you.
No, that's not a thank you.
It's my only concern is that I'm losing, because it's essentially you don't have that sponginess that the gasket is intended.
Keeps the water out. Yeah.
Well, it's also, I would think, a bit of a protection for that. I guess it's called the pan.
Yeah.
The flat part.
That's something we can ask Jim and Craig about, trees, and just see if they know.
I'll take some photos and just document. And John, I'll look at your boat too, because we're both Lake Norman, so and see if it's exactly the same. But yeah. So
what Craig told me when I had my keel box rebuilt is especially on the earlier boats, I have 26. I want to make sure that the keel, especially the front of the keel where that Delrin is, sits flush at the front of the keel box, right? And then if you take that top keel plate off, they did make custom wedges to then get that plate to sit flush. So when it sits in that keel box, it's all the way forward and all the way flush, right? So maybe they didn't do a very good job with that wedge or something along those lines, and
Yeah,
you're getting
now that
compression forward rather than the back.
Yeah, now that you say that, Mark, and BJ, help me because you had my keel plate off. I think there's a couple of washers.
Yeah, you got, well, some of that was a left, right. There was
balance. Okay.
Just make it so it was flat. But they were even, they were like, let me see, there's one in the front, two on each side, and then one back in the back side again.
Okay.
But I think it's mostly left, right, not fore and aft.
Did you change materials? I know one time when I first had my boat, I switched materials and used something that was just janky and didn't hold up. So I ended up having to get from Don Corey a different material to use.
Well, and I got this neoprene from Don, the replacement one. So
then disregard what I said. If Papa Don gave it to you, it's good.
Exactly.
Don the Don.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, any other questions or information to share, ideas to share from the group?
So just on the gudgeons on the back, I found my gudgeons were, the holes had gotten much bigger over time, and that's what was putting stress on the lower ones. So eventually I just, had Craig drill those out, put G10 back in there and reset the hole. So sometimes the gudgeon problem is not necessarily the stress on it from the, and the breakdown of the gudgeon, it's the stress because the holes that hold it in are not round secure. So that's another thing to check.
So that's on the hull you're talking about?
On the hull, right. Through the through hulls.
Cool. Anybody else? Thanks for that, Mike.
I have a stupid comment. So based on the people who have come out for nationals in the past, check your trailer lights now rather than after you get to San Francisco and are driving home. Just saying.
Also, if you're coming through Reno, stop by and say hi.
Please.
Roger. Well, I don't have to stop in Reno and say hi if you guys are actually out of Richmond, right? So that's anyway. Okay. Hey, I hope you guys all enjoyed the discussion this evening. I think, Emily, this is our last one until maybe fall or something. Are we like at the end of winter here? We'll see.
Yeah, we'd certainly welcome any ideas. I think we've done downwind, we've done upwind, we've done a session with Jim Antrim, and I think this one was really helpful for just about everybody. If you've got other ideas, things that you'd like to see, discussions that you'd like to have, just let me or Travis or Jim know, and we'll get it done.
I just want to thank you guys, Emily and Travis, for putting these together. I think one of the reasons you started doing this, Travis, was after you attended the One Design Committee a session with US Sailing, and it came out of, gee, how can we provide value add to the class? And I just really appreciate you guys doing these sessions.
Yeah, and just you're welcome. Thanks for the suggestion. I think it was Trees or Emily that went to that session. all of these guys are on the forum. We're probably going to revamp the website again, so we might be able to get them on the website as well, but they're on the forum. Just remember, to see an attachment on the forum, you have to be logged in. I think a lot of people run into that, so it's something for us to fix. But we've got the previous webinars, the one Steve did on sales shape is out there, and the other one we did, trying to remember. Anyway, they're all out there on the forum, so if you want to go watch them, they're there. And keep the ideas coming, and happy sailing, everybody. Thanks for your time this evening. Have a great rest of the week.
Yes, and thank you for putting this together. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
Have a good evening.
Nice job, guys. Thank you.
I don't think